or it enters the atmospheric circulation of the Earth, moves poleward toward both poles, but especially into the northern hemisphere, and there in higher latitudes and higher elevations, the vapor is cooled, condenses, and rains out. The energy is transported from that forested zone in the Amazon basin to the higher latitudes, warming the higher latitudes differentially. So there isn't much change in the normal circumstance in temperature in the tropics for the change in the temperature of the Earth, but there is a great change in the higher latitudes as that energy is carried from the tropics and deposited there. So we have 2 or 3 times the warming in the high latitudes that we have in the low latitudes. That's a very serious matter because it affects the respiration, the burning of carbon compounds in those high latitudes. Now we replace the forest with soy, as shown in the picture on the New York Times front page. And we have a plant that's maybe 10 inches tall, roots that go down 5 inches. The surface of the ground is so hot you can't touch it. The water evaporated is trifling by comparison. A major change in hemispheric climate as a result of that. Not just local climate, but hemispheric climate. A big change in the Earth. Change in reflectivity, change in the water circulation. That picture on the front page of the New York Times said more than most people realized. It was a powerful statement, very powerful statement. That's happening in the Amazon basin. That transition is happening generally in large areas in the Amazon basin, 1,000-acre areas. Well, that's just a part of the climatic disruption and why it's important. What's the alternative? Well, we have a strange view of the world, highly exploitive view of the world. We don't have to have that view. We could have a view that the world is really a delicate system being overused at the moment. The extent to which it's being overused can be measured. In the case of the climatic disruption, it is measured as the annual accumulation in the atmosphere right now of about 5 billion tons of carbon, not carbon dioxide, carbon. 5 billion tons of the total, about 10 billion tons being emitted into the atmosphere by the total of human activities, which includes the burning of fossil fuels, maybe 8 billion tons, 8.5 or so, maybe a little more now, and about 1.5 billion tons from that deforestation I mentioned in the tropics and elsewhere around the world. The 5 billion tons is the problem. That's what is causing an increase annually in the carbon dioxide burden of the atmosphere of roughly 1.5 to 2 parts per million, now up approaching 400 parts per million, 388 parts per million. That's above the 280 or 284 parts per million, which was the highest carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere over the course of about 800,000 years, as we now know. That was in 1880 or thereabouts. Since 1880, it has risen to its present level, and it's rising now more rapidly than previously as a result of burning fossil fuels and deforestation, with an increasing increment from the erosion and decay of organic matter in soils in the higher latitudes, which is underway, amplified, increased annually by the rise in temperature. You wonder how the rise in temperature produces that. Well, it just increases the rate of decay. If you wonder how the rate of decay proceeds, just open the door of your refrigerator and leave it open for a while, short while. So if we want to cure the problem, we have to first live up to what we agreed to in the Framework Convention on Climate Change of 1992, where we said, all the nations of the world said that they would together move to stabilize the composition of the atmosphere at levels that would protect humans and nature. We haven't done that, of course. The Kyoto Protocol was the first step, nominally, to straighten that out. Are you telling me that it's time to quit? I can go on for a long time.
And I suspect we would like to listen to you, but I do want to give people a chance to stretch their
Nobody's fallen asleep. I've been looking. I'll say one more thing. This is not an impossible challenge. The challenge is to stabilize the composition of the atmosphere and then reduce it. It has to be reduced not to 350 parts per million, that's not stable, but to about 300 or even less. And that's a sound objective. We can do it. We can do it by stopping further deforestation of primary forests on a global basis. We could do it in the U.S. because a great deal of the forested area of the U.S. is owned and controlled by the government. We could go to this government and ask them to preserve all the forest that is primary forest in the U.S. at the moment. Do it by presidential decree. Just say, we aren't going to cut any more Tongass National Forest, and so on. We could do that. If we did it on a global basis, it's worth about 1.5 billion tons of the 5 billion tons. And we could then have a major program of reforesting globally. We reforest about 2 million square kilometers. That's a big area. 1 million square kilometers is France and Germany together. So it's a big area, but we can do it. We can do it. Rebuild forest, natural forest, and preserve it to the extent of about 2 million square kilometers. That's another 500 million to a billion tons of carbon. So you're getting up toward 2.5 billion tons from managing forests. And immediately that leaves 2 to 3 billion tons of carbon to take out of the fossil fuel use. We can do that too. It can be done. All we have to do is go to work and do it. Have to continue. Next year we have to take out more, and after that more, and after that more. So it isn't over. The fossil fuel age has ended. Now we need a new dream. And the new dream has to be a world that we can live in, one that will work. We have examples, very good examples. We live in, say, Adirondack Park.
I would end on that rousing note. That was such a great place to end. That was just fantastic. We can do it.
No, here's how.
One amazing example, yes?
I'll tell you how. Well, I make the point that one of the problems is that our view of the world is exploitive, and that view is not working. We don't have to have an exploitive view. We can have a view in which we decide that we're going to make the biotic potential of the Earth the prime objective of human activities. We do that in various places. I make the example of Adirondack Park. Adirondack Park is a place where we live in New York State under a set of rules that protects the park. We could live in the whole damn world that way, but it takes a new vision and a new will. We should have it. I heard that said in different words this morning in our small meeting. It was wonderful to hear it. And it came from, among others, a representative of the Shell Oil Company. How about that?